I'm sitting here with Chris Allison, and Chris is our newest intern, and he brings some things to our practice that are pretty extraordinary. He's not your typical graduate student. Chris spent his entire childhood as a missionary's child, and lived in that world and did that work and loved it so much that spent the first 10 years of his adult life doing that with his wife. And his wife and he have 8 children, all of whom are homeschooled by her, which is amazing. Chris also works now with Elk River, which is a wilderness treatment program which tries to help kids recapture the values that come from a simpler world and a simpler life. So I think it's very congruent with who he is. And so to start with, Chris, why don't you talk with us some about your history and what you feel like that's done for you?
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Quirk. Well, you mentioned my parents were missionaries, so I mean, Christianity and just the values that brings to me, I think, are very, key to who I am as a person. But not only that, growing up overseas, there's this thing called the third culture kid. Maybe you've heard of that. There's a whole book written about it. But it's a very interesting place that we're put in that we're not really belong to where we lived as a kid, but I also don't belong in the States really that much either. So I'm kind of in this middle place, this third culture. That's why they call it that. But I feel like that's given me a really good perspective where I can kind of see everything around me kind of objectively. So I see that as a real strength of my own, that I can see things from kind of an outside perspective in almost any situation. So.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Why don't you run with that a little bit when you said the thing about I feel like I can see things from a little bit of an outside perspective, suggesting, I think, meaning kind of more of an objective clarity about what's going on in a society or in a culture or in a family even. So talk about that some. What does that mean?
My wife gets on to me sometimes because I can kind of see both sides of an argument, for example, and like I feel like I'm able to just see both sides. I feel like I can whenever I'm presented with an issue, I can see both sides of it. I can understand different people's perspective of it pretty equally, and sometimes that's frustrating for me, but oftentimes it helps give that clarity that you mentioned.
Cool. So what I would get of that is that because, like you said, you were that what did you call it, a third culture kid. You're not really completely immersed in any one culture.
Exactly.
So what it means is you can see the values of the structure of those different cultures and
right.
why they have value. And the thing is, for so many of us, if you were immersed in a single culture, that is your reality. It's not just a perspective
right.
or an approach. It is simply truth.
Right.
And so I think that's an incredibly valuable skill
yes.
for a therapist.
Yeah.
Because the truth is there's a whole lot of versions of truth.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So in your work that you've done with Elk River, talk some about what that's been like for you, because that's got to be an interesting study, because you're looking at kids who are coming from this culture, which in many ways is flawed with its affluence.
Yes.
So talk some about what you're seeing there and what you see take place in a treatment program like
yeah.
that.
I'm glad you mentioned the whole. I think you said it's a simpler lifestyle or something like that. But you're right. We get so. The internet addiction is a real thing, and addiction to phones and that kind of thing, and taking that away is really hard for people, but it also brings us back to just the reality of what life is, and the simplicity of just being who you are. At Elk River, I enjoy seeing kids kind of relearn who they are and kind of figure out, their personalities and what they're going to contribute to themselves and to their world.
Okay.
So.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So you're going to work with us, and you're going to be doing the psychological testing, because that's one of the things we have our interns do. But also we're looking for you to really develop a little practice of your own to work with. Where can you imagine yourself doing that? What kind of work do you imagine yourself doing in that regard? What kind of cases and people do you imagine yourself working with?
That's really hard for me because I see all sides of things. So I almost can envision anybody, but growing up in a relatively large family, and I have a relatively large family. Well, I don't know if relative is right. True. I have a large family.
Big family.
I can say that. So I really have a passion for couples and marriages, for helping people with parenting issues, with just any of that kind of stuff where it's relating to like the family systems and that kind of thing. I really enjoy that, and I would like to help people figure out how to be better versions of themselves in their settings.
And I can see that absolutely being a function.
Mm-hmm.
If you also can see, as you alluded to in a different way when you talked about not being able to even quite know who you are
Mm-hmm.
in a society where you're so overwhelmed by one, opportunities and affluence and ease, as
Right.
well as just bombarded by a culture that sort of tells you what you're supposed to be. And so I would imagine that would be something you'd be able to do a nice job with too. So when you think about that issue about an individual
Mm-hmm.
developing more sense of who am I really and what do I really want and being able to create that for themselves in this life, you know, anything come to mind for you when you think about what's involved in that kind of therapy?
I guess I view it from just almost maybe more of a pragmatic approach of just like, what do people really want out of life? What are their goals in life? And let's figure out how to get to that, instead of just being, like you said, just kind of being bombarded and doing whatever they just reactionary. Kind of helping people be more goal oriented and more um, figure out what they want to do and find how to accomplish that and help them get to that goal.
Yeah. Okay. And probably, we just said on one hand goals, and on the other hand, what I'm hearing in what you're saying is something that becomes a little bit more values driven.
Yes.
And that is a
Yes.
thing we can really, really lose track of
Yes.
in this society, because we are so constantly trying to accommodate to the expectations of the world
Mm-hmm.
that it's really hard to make that stop long enough to figure out what do I actually want. So,
Right.
very cool. Well, very good. Well, good. I very much look forward to having you.
Yeah,
Look forward
me too.
to developing a relationship and helping you find your way.
Yeah. Thank you.